Inheritance is a finicky thing. The process can be exhausting and complicated, even tearing some families apart. But one man's inheritance not only ruined the lives of his descendants, but the lives of thousands of people across different countries. In this video, we'll be discussing the inheritance of Jacob Bakker and how it was used to dupe thousands of people around the world. Stick around until the end to figure out just how they did it. The obituaries. This all started in the state of Pennsylvania, in a city that we now know as Philadelphia. During the 18th century, newspapers were now the most common source of news. All you'd had to do to keep up with international events was keep your ears wide open for a paperboy, and you had today's news in hand. One piece of news that the newspaper reports on the daily is obituaries, reporting the deaths of loved ones at a time when telegrams took too long and telephones were still a few decades away. This was exactly the case for Colonel Jacob Bakker, whose passing was announced in the newspapers in 1839. Colonel Jacob Bakker was a veteran of the American Revolution, an old man who lived a full life and died of natural causes. This announcement in the papers would have been your regular run-of-the-mill obituary, but Jacob Bakker was a peculiar case. Jacob Bakker was a rich man with a $3 billion estate comprising land, assets, and cold hard cash. The only problem? Jacob had never specified the heir to his vast estate. Jacob Bakker was a lonely man who did not have any close relatives, or at least no one close enough for him to state as an heir. In cases like this, the probate lawyer will have to find the closest possible relative, or else the estate will be fed immediately to the state of Pennsylvania. Now, this might seem like a clear-cut case of a man not having any close relatives or kin, but one man's tragic passing is another man's opportunity. You see, the key word here is possible heirs, meaning that if you were able to prove that you were a relative to Jacob Bakker, then you deserved a cut of the money. And so every person with a Bakker surname came flocking like vultures to a corpse to prove that they were close relatives with Jacob Bakker, all just to claim their rightful inheritance. And with that large an amount, it wouldn't take long until the wheels spun off, calling all Bakkers. The obituary in the papers caught the attention of locals in Philadelphia, but the entire country only caught wind when a group of businessmen posted ads on nationwide newspapers. One of these businessmen, and arguably the person who would become the brains of the operation, was William Bakker. William Bakker was smart, and he wanted a piece of the pie that he knew he couldn't grab all on his own. These businessmen wanted to look for the rightful heir of Jacob Bakker, asking possible heirs to send a letter to their business address to file a claim to the heir. The ad went on to ask for some requirements. The main requirement was proof showing that they or a family member once resided in Philadelphia, or that they were related to a Jacob Bakker. Americans everywhere started sending their letters just for a chance at the estate, as expected of course. This wasn't what they wanted by posting the ad in the first place. What the businessmen didn't expect was that the value of the estate would transcend borders. Letters started coming in from Canada, Europe, and heck, even Cubans wanted to see if they had a little Jacob Bakker in their blood as well. The volume of letters became so overwhelming that the businessmen eventually established offices to handle these letters, calling themselves the Bakker Heirs Association, which is a mouthful, so from here on we'll just call them the BHA. The BHA. The BHA was established as a means of collecting every possible heir of Jacob Bakker and managing every heir, making sure that they're in the loop about the ongoing court case to claim Jacob Bakker's estate. The amount of letters got so big that the BHA even had to establish branch offices in Ontario, Canada. Considering the amount of manpower needed to sort through the massive number of letters, they started hiring letter sorters. These sorters were employees, of course, and employees needed to get paid. To help filter through the applicants and to help pay for the new workers, the BHA started billing potential heirs filing fees. The BHA also started offering services such as in-staff historians and genealogists that could help you trace your lineage for you. Many reserved families with small fortunes everywhere started dumping their money into the association, hoping to increase their chances at winning the claims. The BHA was, of course, more than happy to help these paying families. To them, it was an investment to secure their future. What's a few $100 at the promise of millions, right? Doctors, lawyers, judges, and even government officials were staking their claims. Eventually, the heirs totaled up to a few thousand. The BHA would regularly hold meetings with the potential heirs and update them on the status of their court battle, saying that they were on the cusp of proving their heritage and earning the inheritance they so deserved. Some of the potential heirs even leveled up from being just an heir to managing and working with the BHA, earning as they helped their fellow inheritors, and as these hopeful heirs waited for the answer, all they got was nothing. The reveal. Among all the potential heirs that applied to claim the estate via the BHA, none of them were viable heirs. The man of the hour, Colonel Jacob Bakker, still remains a mystery to everyone, a stranger with no history, because he never existed in the first place. That's right, the story of Colonel Jacob Bakker having a multi-million-dollar estate to distribute to his potential heirs was a hoax. In fact, his entire existence was a hoax cooked up by the businessmen who established the BHA in the first place. There was no plot of land awarded to him after the Civil War, nor was there a $3 billion bank account ripe for the taking. The plan was convoluted and well thought out, with multiple professionals being paid by the hour. Heck, even the genealogists and historians that kept the scam's victims on the hook were still on the BHA's payroll. As the money kept coming in, the officials were also tight-lipped on the scam tearing the nation apart. The scam ran for decades, until finally in 1928, Parliament passed the Security Frauds Prevention Act, an act specifically used to work against corporations such as the BHA. The BHA offices were raided by police soon after the law was passed, and what they found can simply be described as the rich abusing the naive. Apparently, William Bakker had been using the victims' money to fund his own lavish lifestyle, living on the lap of luxury in the decade that he was appointed to his own office. Frequent flights from state to state, purchasing property for himself, and taking his lovely wife on trips to expensive hotels for days on end. William Bakker used hundreds of thousands of dollars from the BHA, and the same could be said for many of the other BHA office heads that were on the payroll during this time. This, and among many other documents, was enough for a prosecution. Justice. This news was a surprise to every single one of Jacob Bakker's hopeful inheritors, but not to the people who had an outside perspective on the subject. There were many claims that the entire process might be bogus, but the victims were already too deep into the BHA to even think of jumping ship, led on only by false promises. But of course, justice will always prevail. The investigators eventually found that the scam was headed by a Philadelphia lawyer by the name of Aaron Silexone. Aaron was the brains of the operation and would eventually be found guilty with William Bakker alongside him. The investigation also revealed that William Bakker was also the head of many other fraudulent companies, making him the prime suspect in this case. William Bakker was sentenced to only a year in jail, considering his age and the nature of his crimes. Although he did scam thousands of people of their life savings, his crimes were still non-violent. An unfortunate and cruel crime that only resulted in the slap of a wrist. So the next time you see a get-rich-quick scheme, think twice about just how much you want it.